Okay, let me hit the right recording. Okay. A couple more people coming in. So in the chat, we would appreciate you guys letting us know your thoughts on how are rubrics used and who uses rubrics. And then also in the chat, we're putting the slide deck, and then there's a homework assignment. If you didn't get the homework assignment done, don't panic. We'll walk you through. It's just meant to save some time. But if you click on the one that's the homework assignment, you might want to have that open to the side there so that when we talk about that one. And got a couple more people entering. So we'll let that happen and we'll get started. Sorry, I got a little bit of a cold, so sorry if my voice goes in and out. Sorry for the annoying pitch. Sorry for the sniffing. How are rubrics used and who uses rubrics? Okay. A couple more people. Oh, you're entering them, Frankie?
Yes, I am. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Do you see Peggy yet? Or is it so?
I do not.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, she's there. Hi,
Yeah.
Oh,
Peggy.
because she was already in as a.
Oh, so she's all set. I don't need to give you power or anything. She's good.
Yes.
All right.
She has power.
All right. Hey, if you guys don't know, my two of my amazing teammates, Frankie and Peggy, let me have them introduce themselves very quickly, but like, I don't even know how I would survive in this position without the two of them. And then we have Vince and Sarah as well. But go ahead, Frankie, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Frankie Valencia, and I've been teaching in the district for, I think this is like my 31st year. And I am now in the role of instructional science coach.
Go ahead, Peggy.
And I'm Peggy Hernandez. I've also been in the district 31 years, like 15 or so in middle school and some elementary. And I'm the teacher in the planetarium. And I have been on the district science committee for something like 25 years. And I work with Deb a lot because she's technically my principal because I teach in the planetarium now. I don't have my own building principal. I don't have my own building anything. I'm the custodian and chief bottle washer there. And I am slammed with elementary requests this week. So I will very soon not be as visible because I will be seeing a lot more groups coming into my virtual planetarium for this semester.
And hey, just so everybody knows, Peggy has a ton of stuff for the secondary level as well. And I think in this session, we have some elementary, I think we have everybody in here. We have elementary, we have middle school, we have high school folks in here right now. But, you know, Peggy also has stuff to offer secondary folks. So they go to the Commons, Canvas Commons, and find you, Peggy?
Secondary, I don't have a Canvas Commons above 8th grade, but there are just contact me if you want to come to the planetarium and we'll work out an individualized program for your session, for your class.
And I don't know if everybody knows me, I've had a name change. So I'm Deb McMullen, but I was previously Deb Perryman. And I have been teaching in U40, I was teaching in U46 at Elgin High School from 94 until I think this is my 4th year now as a science coordinator, your science coordinator. So if you don't know me, I'm a person that you can contact with any questions, concerns that you have. And our team does our best to answer. I will tell you guys, if you've emailed me in the last, since January 2nd, I went down with COVID. And so I'm wildly trying to get caught up in all my emails. So if you've contacted me in January and I haven't gotten to you yet, I apologize. I'm working through those emails to get to you. Most people know we try to get an answer to you within 24 to 48 hours. That's our goal. But I do want to say that I've been struggling a little bit with COVID. So all right, so we have here for you guys some parking lots. You should have access to this now, the slide deck. So if you have any questions or concerns throughout this presentation, please go back to the slide deck, go to this slide, find your parking lot. If it's something you just want us to know about, don't worry about adding your email. But if it's something you really need us to address or answer, go ahead and put your email in the parking lot as well. It's Jamboard. And so you just basically put a sticky note on there with your question or concern, and then we'll answer them both on the sticky note. So if you don't want to, you want an answer, but you don't put your email, keep checking the Jamboard back. And we use the same Jamboard all year. As we put answers, we'll put a different colored Post-it note over it so you know that we've answered it. But if you put your email in there, we'll answer you personally, whichever way works for you. So today we have an hour. Well, now we have less than an hour to get through what we want to get through with you, which is to engage you in conversations around 3D rubrics and assessments. We also want to provide you a scaffolding tool called the single point rubric, if you haven't seen that before, that supports you in backward design. And then we also want to provide you some interaction with some resources that will help you as you're doing your planning, some stuff from NGSS and other sites that would help you with that. That's our goal. So in the chat, we've been asking people to tell us how are rubrics used and who uses rubrics. So Peggy and Frankie, if you don't mind sharing out, what are some
Sure.
things you're saying?
Rubrics are used to assess design units, and everyone should be using rubrics. I use rubrics with students to go over the intended learning targets. Trying to use rubrics to help me backwards plan so I can be more deliberate about what to incorporate in my lessons. All stakeholders use rubrics. Rubrics are used to design, teach, and assess clear learning.
Provide a way to assess what is essential to the standard being addressed.
Yeah, that's huge.
Students, teachers, and anyone else involved, and I think families should know the rubric.
Love it.
Should be used by all. Show teachers and students how to lay out expectations for learning standards. There's many awesome things.
Yeah. And I think that you guys embodied all of the stakeholders who might need it, right? Everybody needs to be able to have that rubric. And then that last comment there, I think is it hinting at what we plan from a rubric. And that's the part I think sometimes I know when we transitioned to SBLA at Elgin High School and to NGSS, that's awkward. That's awkward to think of a rubric in that way, because I'd always thought of it as, how do I tell kids the checklist that they need to turn in of stuff? And so it's a little bit of a shift, and that's what we want to spend some time helping you guys, looking at that. We have some other reminders that we always do, and that is that you should have one rubric and assessment for every standard or competency. Now that gets a little loosey-goosey in AP and honor sometimes, that you might end up having several rubrics that you're assessing competency-wise on an assessment, and we can help you work through that. But if you're an NGSS course, the expectation is that you would have one rubric and one assessment and for every standard, and then one rubric and assessment at the time of your planning. Some of you are more advanced and you're ready for bundling. And so then in that case, that second focal point that we've got there, we can help you with that as well. Some of you are learning that you want to bundle for a more complete and understandable storyline, and we can help you with that too. Rubric and assessment should be created before the planning. That's where we start. Even if you just rough them out, like even if it's just roughed out, it's not perfect yet, that's okay. But you need to start there. Teachers refer to the rubric throughout the teaching of the unit. So we're constantly talking to the students about where we are in that rubric. And then also, let me get rid of that glare there, sorry. And then also within that, letting them know so that they can figure out and reflect themselves metacognitively to try and see where they are. All feedback should center on that rubric as well. And then grades are determined from the summatives on the entire rubric. So something that we're noticing is that people are writing summatives for a level 1 or a level 2 on the rubric. So let's just think about that for a second. That's actually adding a lot more work to you. And this is what that might look like. I might have a level 1 rubric, rote memory, a bunch of vocab, and I want to do a summative on that vocab. So now we're giving kids a 4, 3, 2, 1 on a level 1 skill and not the entire rubric. And that creates, I think that's really hard. And I didn't realize that people were doing that. And I thought, wow, they're doing so much. As a teacher, you're doing so much extra work to try and do that. Oops, sorry, I tried to admit someone and I messed up my screen share. So let us help you with that too. If you're falling into that, here's the other thing that's happening that we know is happening. And we've done these SBLA sessions for administrators to help them too. Because we know that you guys are getting a lot of pressure to put in summatives. Where are your summatives? Where are your summatives? Where are your summatives? So we've been working with your administrators to help them understand that the entire rubric is assessed for a summative and asking them to take the pressure off of you guys as far as like forcing you to do a ton of summatives, like understanding the use of a summative. So we have been trying to work with your principals on that. If you fall into that category, if that starts happening, just let us know and we'll walk you guys through a conversation. We've also talked to a lot of administrators who have said that they also don't want you just randomly doing summatives to do a summative, that they also would appreciate that conversation of like, hey, the reason I don't have a lot of summatives right now, or I'm not doing a summative on that is for this reason. So just communicating with each other. And if you need help doing that, please let us know. We would be happy to help you. All courses, AP and honors courses and PLTW should be on the SBLA principles and should be in 3 dimensions. So we just want to make sure you guys know that as well. Okay, we're going to show you a rubric and we would like to start a protocol that we can maybe use with it. This is somebody else's work and that person might be in this room. I don't know. But we would like you to tell us in the chat something you like about the rubric, a question you have about the rubric, and a suggestion you have for the rubric. Okay, so you can do those individually or you could do them all at the same time, but we're going to show you this rubric. We want to give you a second to look at it. And in the chat, tell us something you like about it, a question, or a suggestion. We'll give you some time to do that. So a question, a suggestion, and something you like. As soon as you see something.
Yes. What's the difference between a 3 and a 4? What are the requirements? What are the requirements?
Where is the standard?
It's going so quickly.
Yeah, I see a lot of questions, comments, and
We like to list out the actual requirements. There are numbers.
There are numbers. It's a like, yeah.
What are these questions? What are these requirements?
What does well mean?
That's a good question.
It's vague.
Yeah. So we want to make sure we're doing, the positive when we're doing work. So I like that you guys did a good job of, what are direct things going to those suggestions that you guys might have. I'm going to ask another question. Could you plan a unit from this rubric? And then the other, question I would have if I was working with the teacher with this one might be, how would a student know how to remediate themselves? Like, how do they know to go from the 1 to the 2? Hey, teacher, I'm at the 1. I need some interventions. How do I get myself to the 2? That would be another question I would have for the author of this particular.
So people are saying no, they would not be able to use this to plan since they have no idea what it's about.
Awesome. So that's kind of what we want to focus you guys on. We get tons of feedback that in addition to wanting planning time, that help writing rubrics is something, and assessments is something that people want. And so we want to just give you guys some pointers on that, some tools that you can use in the hopes that, when I think you're going to end up getting some planning time later to make sure that you've got that some stuff to start with in case that's still. Here's a generalized rubric. And again, this is generalized. the level 1 in your rubric should be those basic kind of rote memory pieces of information. And you want to think of it too of, well, in order to get a student to the 3, what are those rote memorization kinds of pieces that they might need to get to the 3? And those might be Googleable. That might be another word I use for them. If they're Googleable, they're probably a 1. Okay. The 2 is where we're starting to make connections. In other words, we want kids to be making connections between science and engineering practices, between the DCI or the content, cross-cutting, or even it could be as simple as making connections between 2 of the vocab words that you want them to be knowing, you know? So the 2 captures the relationships within the concepts. The 3 then is the standard or the competency. So it's NGSS, you're just putting the standard right in there. And then the 4 is where we are expanding. And I've seen some really awesome 4s. A pitfall of a 4 is a question to ask yourself, is my 4 just having students do more of the 3? So that's a feedback place that we sometimes get into with folks. Here are, go ahead, Frankie.
This goes right to, I think it's Anthony's question anyways. So what are the 3Ds? So all science courses capture evidence of the 3 dimensions of science within the rubric. So we have science and engineering practices, which is our SEP. We have disciplinary core ideas and cross-cutting concepts. So all 3 of those need to be included within the rubric.
Yeah. And so we're gonna show you what that looks like. And we're also gonna show you that, you know, our goal for you, our hope for you is that everything you're doing in your classroom is at least 2 dimensionals. So you're at least using 2 of these at one time for a lesson. Whenever you do your assessment, your summative, the 3, it always needs to, students always need to give you evidence of all 3 dimensions. Do you, can you do something in one dimension? Yeah, you can. But we're encouraging you guys to do things 2-dimensionally and assessing always in 3 dimensions. So we're constantly moving. You might need to do an intervention in your class that's just 1D, but we'd like to see us move away from just 1D instruction. So that's one of the other reasons we want to show this to you guys. So one of the assignments, we gave you guys a homework assignment. If we need to put it back in the chat for you, we will. But one of the things that we wanted you guys to do in that homework assignment was to look at a rubric that we wrote, and it's for 1 LS 1-2. Now here's another thing I just want to say. We picked a 1st grade standard intentionally because we've been using the same 1st grade standard in our system pre-K through 12. We've also been using the same rubric, same standard with parents to help them understand the 3 dimensions of science and also to understand SBLA. And we also use the same one in our meetups. We use the same one with our administrative teams because we wanted to create a common example for our entire district and all of our stakeholders to go back to. So we know that your majority of you are secondary and that we're showing you an elementary example, but we wanted to be transparent about why we did. So in the chat or unmic yourself, I know it's always scary sometimes, out in your homework assignment, or if you weren't able to get to the homework, what are these 3 colors? Any guesses?
The 3 dimensions.
Why did we change the color code?
Here's the blue is the SEP, orange DCI, green is going to be the cross-cutting concept.
Yep.
Perfect.
Lots of right answers.
Love it. Yes, love it. So now this is just this is just, you don't have to do this. We've been doing this, especially in our common assessments, and we're transitioning to do this because it's a visual. This is a visual way for me to check to make sure that in my rubric, I am capturing, first of all, for the 3, I'm capturing all 3 of the dimensions. And then also I'm making mental notes. So when I look at this rubric, some of this rubric is 2-dimensional and some of this rubric is 3-dimensional. Using the numbers for the rubric, which ones are 2-dimensional? Which portions of our rubric are two-dimensional? Looking for the two-dimensional ones. Anything there yet, Frankie?
Yes. 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2.
Love it. Perfect. So then our 3 and our 4, the way we have our assessment set up and our rubric set up is giving us those three dimensions. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with doing a lesson, a formative that is one-dimensional or two-dimensional or three-dimensional. But assessments must always be, summative assessments must always be three-dimensional. So then in case you didn't get a chance to really look at this as a homework assignment, determine patterns in the behavior of parents and offspring that help offspring survive. If we look at that one, we basically want to make sure that our students understand that plants and animals have offspring. That's our 1. Do they know that? Then we go to our 2 with a relationship where we're talking about the signal response. So that's our cross-cutting concept. And then connecting that to, hey, parents have offspring. And then the 3, we're bringing in the actual media that we're going to be working in, which is text and media for our assessment. So I just want to give you guys a little bit of that background. And then, oh, you know what I forgot to do, Miss Frankie? I forgot to turn on the sound. So I may have to do that. I may have to come down and go. The other thing to make sure everybody knows is that the standard, if it's NGSS, the standard is the assessment. Now that creates some challenges for us right now in COVID. If you have a plan and conduct investigation standard, that's a little tough to do right now. So we may have to transfer out a science and engineering practice to something else that makes sense. You're allowed to do that. NGSS allows us to do that. We want you to try to stick to them because we're looking at a system when that's something else we've got to work on to tweak to get better. But we're looking at making sure that there's a nice breakdown of all of the science and engineering practices. But you can switch one out, especially in COVID. If we can't do plan and conduct, that's okay. Let's switch it out for something different. But the bottom line is that the assessment is the standard, the way that we have that written. All right, we're gonna walk you through, and again, your homework assignment was to look at this, this assessment that Frankie's gonna run us through and answer these 4 questions. So we're gonna run through it really quickly because we're not sure everybody got to do the homework, but does this activity match the standard in the rubric? Can this activity be used as a formative or a summative? Could be both too. Can this activity be used synchronously or asynchronously? And then can you identify the phenomenon we decided to highlight in this assessment? So Frankie, actually, I'm gonna have to exit the screen share. Do you wanna share this or do you want me to go ahead and share it and you move me along?
Go ahead and share it, please.
Okay, so I gotta stop screen sharing because I forgot to put on the volume.
I can just pretend we hear the tweeting.
Okay, we can do that. We can do it that way too. We can do it that way too. Okay.
I could just do.
Oops.
Okay.
And you guys should have this in the chat if you want to look at it yourself. Sorry. All right.
Okay, so this is for first grade. So in addition to having the actual reading there, I also made a Loom video of myself reading it for students that might not be at that reading level. So you're going to be able to do some bird watching today. The birds we'll be watching are called northern cardinals. The male has a brilliant red color and marks out his territory with a song. Pretend you're hearing the song there. The female is reddish olive in color, and after mating will lay a clutch of 3 or 4 eggs. The parents live together for years and both take care of their chicks. The parents eat seeds, but they feed their offspring mostly insects.
Okay,
then there's
go ahead, Frankie.
Okay, and so then there's a 1-minute video for them to watch. Are you going to play the video? We need sound for that.
Skip the, yeah, I think we're going to skip the video, but you've got this so you can look at it. And then we have the graphic organizer.
Okay, so we have our, what is the, those of you that watch the
So then
video?
the students watch. Yeah, what were the,
But
no, I think that's perfect. Sorry, my internet glitching. For those of you that watched the video, what were the offspring signals and what were the parent responses? You can either unmic or put it in the chat. So for those of you that were able to check it out, you know, what were the offspring signal and what were the parent responses? So how do baby cardinals signal when they're hungry?
open mouth, the beak's wide open, chirping.
Perfect. And then what was the parent responses to that, to those? So how did the parents respond?
They
to
brought the
open-
food, they give the food to feed them.
Perfect.
Yep.
Was it just one parent or both parents?
Both.
Yeah. So then how does that offspring signal and response help the offspring survive? How does the offspring signal and parent response help that cardinal baby survive? It's really simple. Don't overthink it. We're all science teachers, and so you're all coming up with probably.
they-
Hungry, they get food.
They got
There
it.
we go. And so then they survive, right? Because they
Birds get worms.
Yep,
Mhm.
that's it.
perfect. Just very good. Hopefully you guys are seeing why we picked this one to use as the example across the district with the parents, with everybody, you know, so everybody's on the same page. Perfect. Okay, so now let's go through and think about some of these questions. The first question was, did the activity match the standard and the rubric? And so to help us with that, let me just go back a couple slides and let's pull up this rubric. Did that activity match the rubric?
Yes.
Are there any portions of that
Yes.
rubric that we didn't collect evidence from directly? So if you look at this rubric, is there any portions of that assessment that we did that did not collect direct evidence?
Plants is what I'm seeing in the chat. The plants.
Okay, so there was nothing about plants.
Mhm.
Mhm. How about, did we collect direct evidence from students that they understand that plants and animals have offspring? Or was that sort of an assumption in that particular assessment?
Yeah, no, the answer is no to that. We did not.
Okay. So now here's a couple of things, right? We can either add that somehow to that assessment, or maybe as the teacher, I made the decision to leave that off because during our formative work, I was able to collect evidence that every kid gets the 1. So if every kid gets the 1, I don't have to include that on my summative assessment, right? Or as I progress through my formatives, if it's a formative, I don't have to necessarily include that. I know that my kids can. So that decision.
Mhm.
About any other level on this rubric that did not assess?
The 4.
Love it. You guys are all aces. Okay, so let's go to this next question too. Can this activity be used as a formative or a summative?
Formative is what I'm. Both.
Okay,
Formative.
anybody want
No
to offer?
4. So the question mark.
There we go. There's no 4 in that activity, so it can only be formative because our summative has to involve the whole thing, like has to involve your whole rubric. Now, we could do a couple things. We could do an addendum, like we could still use that to assess up to the 3 and then give the students an extra question. We could add a question to that one. Anybody want to take a guess at like what, you know, if I go back to this, Because this is actually one we needed Vince on because, Peggy, Frankie, and I, the old heartless secondary teachers, what could we add? We're laughing because we did stuff that was traumatizing to first graders probably. But what is the potential for this? What could we do for a 4 to add?
Besides
So
possibly
it could be
killing off,
summative.
give a different signal example than see student responses.
Perfect. But now, is that more of the 3? Is that still signal response? Is that more of the 3 or is that really the 4? The 4 is always very challenging.
Maybe apply it to a different species,
Oh, okay. So that's that we wanted to bring that up.
a different bird.
So the phenomenon is what? What's the phenomenon in the storyline of this lesson that we were putting together? What's the phenomenon? We're going to skip to question 4 now. Somebody just said it. The phenomenon for this one, the storyline for this one was that we picked a cardinal. So if we pick a different species, and that's the intent of this rubric is general enough that you could pick any species you wanted to, right? But if we just have them apply it to a different species, is that really a 4 or is it more of the 3? And my answer to that is it's more of the 3. So here's an example of a 4. What if the mama bird was deaf? Could the mama bird, if the mama bird was deaf, would the offspring survive? And so what do you guys think about that? If the mama bird were deaf and couldn't hear the offspring, would the offspring still be able to survive? And how would that happen? Are they putting it in there?
Survive using visual clues.
There we go. Yeah.
Do an experiment.
Right. And we found another video of it was traumatic. This is another one we laugh about. We found a mama, like a herd of elephant and a baby elephant fell in the river and they were all trying to save the baby elephant. They did, but you had to watch all the trauma and it's like, maybe they're first graders. Let's not try.
Although this same rubric could be used with elephants
and could be used for that one.
Could be used with anything, any animal.
And every single one of those animals, let's go back to our questions here. Every single one of those animals, we would consider a different phenomenon for that rubric and that assessment. And then we would create the storyline if we needed to, like we created the storyline of, kids wouldn't know the offspring and parent signal, right? The offspring signal and the parent of a bird. So we had to create that storyline for them so they knew. Same thing for a baby elephant or whatever animal we want to include in this. The phenomenon then is whatever we pick. So now let's go back to the idea of synchronous and asynchronous. Okay. Just thinking of this as a formative, because we decided we couldn't use this as is as a summative. As a formative, could this be synchronous, asynchronous? I guess we should add in person, right? Synchronous is in person. So synchronous or asynchronous for this activity, or both?
It can be both, many are saying.
How about if we add the level 4, like we added that question there and asked kids, hey, the mother bird is deaf. If we added that to it and it's now a summative, could that be done synchronously or asynchronously? Or both?
Both. It can still be both. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And it would be really hard for a kid to cheat, right?
Right. It's not Googleable.
There we go. And so that's where we're headed. That's where I know it's at a snail's pace but we're trying to lead you guys through this to get there. So now we're going to do a different activity and we're going to put you guys into breakout rooms actually for this one. The 2 questions we want you, when you're going through this activity, the 2 things that we'd like you to think about is, well, what is a single point rubric? And actually, interestingly enough, Mr. Fisher showed one today. We were like, woohoo, in our texting.
Yes.
And then is the provided unit plan. So you're going to look at an entire unit plan, 3-dimensional, and do all of the formatives match? Okay, so now we're going to put this in the chat for you so that you have access to it. And then Frankie, do you have that in the chat? Do you want me to put it in the chat, or Peggy?
Yep.
Then do you want to run through, maybe we should show you guys what a single point rubric looks like first? Do you want me to do that? Do you want to do that, Frankie, Peggy?
I'm getting it shared, so.
Okay, you're shared. Okay, so Frankie, you're muted just in case. Mute gets us.
Sorry, I was getting it to put it. Peggy, do you have it?
It's loading. It's slow,
Okay.
but I'll do it. I'll do that.
So I'll go ahead and talk about the single point rubric. It may be a little bit smaller here on the screen, but you have access to it. Peggy's putting it in the chat for you, so you'll be able to pull it up and take a look at it. But there are when single point rubrics were first created, they were created to share with students, and it kind of prevents them from saying, hey, I'm going to stop at the 1 or I'm going to stop at the 2. I know as much as I need to know to get a 2. What you do is you take all of the, Deb, can you scroll up a little bit?
Sure.
So that we can see it? Okay, you take all of the learning outcomes and you put them in the center. And the learning outcomes here are directly from the evidence statements from NGSS. So if you are doing a class that has competencies instead of the NGSS standards evidence statements, then you would use that for your competencies. So with the NGSS, we use our evidence statements and we put those down the center in the learning objectives. Now, originally, the single point rubric was made so that you could share this with students. And then on one side, you would have how the students are meeting that. And on the other side, you would have what the students need to do to meet the learning outcome. We've kind of developed so that we have another use for the single point rubric, and we use it as a planning tool. So as we are planning, we come up with activities that will meet the needs of the students for the specific learning outcomes. So you see the yellow there, the yellow learning outcome, and on the right hand side there are activities that would help students get there to obtain the obtaining information. So okay, go ahead, Deb.
All right, so we're gonna put you guys into breakout rooms, and because it took a little bit longer than we had thought the beginning part, what we're gonna do is we're gonna only give you 5 minutes to solve the mystery. And the mystery is for you to figure out which activity does not match the intended goals. So we're going to just tell you that the answer is only in the yellow section. So you're going to look at the yellow sections. You're going to look at the activities according to that learning target or the learning objective in the middle. And you're going to try and figure out which one doesn't match. And again, it's only in the yellow. We're going to give you 5 minutes because we have a special treat for you. And we want to make sure we get back. We're going to talk about it. So I've put you in rooms. If you guys would open this up and then actually let me change so that you guys can all screen share as well. In those breakout rooms, we're going to pop in and out. We would like you to figure out in the yellow which doesn't match. All right, give you 5 minutes. We'll bring it back at 45. Figure it out, Mr. K. Miss Alicia. Hi, Mr. Haycamp.
Yeah, we got it.
Sweet. You got lost out there. All right. Excuse me. Ugh.
Sorry, Deb, my computer decided it was going to be out of power. Can you?
Don't
breakout
even
room
worry
too?
about it.
I feel like the kids.
Well, I know. I'm upstairs today, and I'm worried my internet will die. So,
Yeah.
all those-
My laptop was not charged.
It's okay. It's all right, Colleen. Didn't even have to admit it. So you guys, which one of those activities did not belong, and maybe why? Which activity did you guys pick and why? The seeds move. Everybody. I'm seeing a lot of head shaking. So Anna, I'm gonna put you on the on the spot. No, she doesn't want me to. Why did you guys think the seeds move? Nothing to do with offspring, right? And but you see how it's like a concrete dog a little bit, right? I mean, it's close, but it's not exact. Peggy and Frankie, do you guys maybe matching baby animals might be better to get that skill? So yeah. So,
No, actually, we thought the matching baby animals maybe wasn't, because it's not
Oh.
about, I mean, kindergartners know that a baby penguin looks like a mama penguin. Like, it's not about matching them. It's about knowing that they have offspring. So it just didn't seem to be as strong a connection. And we didn't get
Got
to
it.
seeds move. So that's probably the one
Good.
that we should have looked at.
I love that, Peggy, because here's another thing, right? Maybe that activity wouldn't be necessary for all the kids, but who could we maybe have used that activity for? Right? Maybe there we go. Very good, Courtney. And she said for English language learners. Yeah. And maybe then too, it becomes an intervention, right? It's an intervention piece. So if kids don't know that there's, that the offspring piece, that part of the level 1, then, and maybe we do some assessing and only a few kids have to do that activity as opposed to everybody, right? So then we can maybe gain some speed too in what we're trying to do, and we don't assign that to everyone. But it becomes an asynchronous check-in for the kids who don't seem to quite get that, or to make sure that our English language learners are good.
Okay, so like a 0.5.
Yeah, it might be like a 0.5. So Anna, I see that you unmiked. Did you want to say something, or you just?
No.
Okay.
It's what we said at the beginning, why we chose that activity, but yeah.
All right. Perfect. Okay. So some of you, this might be the first time you've looked at a single point rubric. And so one of our goals for this was just to make sure that you guys understood what a single point rubric is. And we've been changing the name from rubric to planning tool. But another way you could use this, I don't know about you guys, but when I was in the classroom, I struggled with kids making poor decisions like, oh, I got the 1, I'm going to stop there. Or, oh, I got the 2, I'm good. If you, another way to sort of trick them is to go ahead and show them the rubric, because we always want them to have the rubric. But in that single point rubric, having it change to feedback. So you've got the learning objectives in the middle, and then one column would be student can do, and the other one would be student needs to work on. And so then that could become like a little bit of a communication tool between the two. And if you're interested in that, we can show you that that later. You guys did a great job of identifying which activity. And part of the point of the single point rubric is to keep us really focused. So we don't want to stir up any trouble. I don't want to stir up any trouble, but when teachers come to me and say, or come to our team and say, hey, I'm having trouble getting through everything, one of the first things we do is we check out your Canvas account. And when we do that, what we're finding is that people are teaching a lot of things that are not in those evidence statements. So they're doing a lot of the seed moving kinds of activities, maybe because we just aren't tightly aligned to what the standard wants us to do. Maybe it's a favorite activity, and so we just do it because it's a favorite activity. Either way, we're worried about the level of frustration for you guys, because one of the big things we're hearing is, in this age of COVID, kids are not turning in formatives. So let's not assign more formatives than we need to get them in that instruction. And then also, let's make sure that all the formatives we're giving the kids tightly align, and we can show them that they tightly align, and the kids can see the connection between that and how they're going to move across that rubric. My team, do you guys want to add anything to that?
No, the question was, what if some of those activities are to build scaffolding? And that's very important. The scaffolding thing is very important. It might not be exactly what is listed in there, but it's necessary. But having the single point rubric would help you to weed out those things that aren't necessarily scaffolding or don't go along with what is supposed to be taught.
Yeah.
For example,
and
with the middle school, one of the standards that is taught at the beginning of the year, teachers often interpret to include the parts of the atom, protons, neutrons, electrons, and periodic table, and that's not in the middle school standards. And teachers have spent weeks teaching that. And so it's not needed for scaffolding. That's actually part of the high school standards now.
Yeah, and Peggy's example, I think of her team's example of the animal movement one, or the matching. That would be an example of, I'm going to put it here because I might need it to scaffold some kids. I may need an intervention. And so that's what's also in a planning tool. I did a planning tool for AP Environmental Science. I don't know if you guys were in that session, but I put in there, like, when I started that, I think I put in 25 activities into my single point rubric. And I was like, that's way too much. This is going to take me months to get through this, especially in the scheduling. So I got it down to 9. I picked 9 of the most important and 3 summative assessments for that giant chapter in AP on energy. And so that I felt like was doable. Like, I could get kids through that. So great question. Absolutely necessary and true. So I'm going to give, let's see, I want to share, let me find Jesse. We wanted to give you guys not just our word on this, but we wanted to tap Jesse. So Jesse, do you want me to send this to you so you can screen share? You want to just tell me what to do?
I can just kind of talk through it if you want. So
Sure.
Taking a look here, because this has kind of been the thing that we've been looking at all year, and as we've gone through, I've been part of the Earth and Space Science team that's trying to we redid the curriculum started to do that last year, writing some of the common assessments and stuff like that. I just kind of jumped in and tried to give it a try, and so Deb asked me to talk a little bit about some of the attempts, or maybe show you something that's maybe not quite as advanced as the first grade version of a single point rubric. But so what I wanted to see, or kind of just share my thoughts. You can take a look at some of my takeaways down at the bottom there. But like, I don't by any way, shape, or form think that any of these are perfect or even great. But I think, as I've done them a couple of times, basically going through every standard that I did first semester, so I'm up to like round 5, I guess, right now. It got a little bit easier. I got a little bit faster, and some of the little stuff that seems a little overwhelming, like all the colors and all the like trying to put stuff in the right boxes, it got a little bit more of a second nature. The other thing I have to say, though, is it really is a lot easier if you do it with somebody else, especially the assessment writing part and the rubric part. The 2 that I have up here are our common assessments. So those were put together with, a bunch of other people besides just me. And that part of things was very, very helpful. And so if you can find somebody, either in your school, or, if somebody else, and or even just talking to Deb and Frankie and Peggy, it makes a big difference. And the other thing to think about too is some of the standards are going to be harder than others to fit in, especially when you try to pull those 3 dimensions. But at the same time, it's really made me think a lot more about the engineering, the science practices, the cross-cutting concepts. Deb, I don't know if you can click on the most recent attempt, which right now it's basically, we're talking about plate tectonics. That's what the standard is. If we think of it kind of maybe in a little more old school terms, so you can read the standard up there at the top. It says evaluate evidence, current move. So we're talking about plate tectonics, but the goal is to explain why there's a different age distribution of rocks on continents and on the ocean floor. And so, yeah, one of the things is, that I find myself doing as I've, working through this is using some of those terms, or really focusing in on things like I can't remember talking about, like talking specifically about things like, hey, this pattern, and using those words and using those terms has kind of come a lot more into the forefront of our discussion as we've gone through looking at some of the different activities and things I'm doing, and trying to point those things out, as opposed to just being, in the past, I don't think I would have ever really focused in on looking at specific patterns and using that as the way to kind of bring together the idea that plates are moving in specific ways, and some are moving apart and some are moving together, and looking at different pieces of evidence. Like just the other day we were taking a look at what am I taking a look at? Just looking at things like volcanic evidence and earthquake evidence, and the age distribution of the rocks and topography, to talk about what's happening at boundaries. And we look basically at all the patterns, and the kids are putting together, what are the patterns that they see. So you guys can kind of scroll through a lot of this stuff if you want to see an example, but taking a look at that learning criteria, all that stuff is coming right off of the NGSS stuff. So that was, I'm almost like just copy and pasting all that learning criteria stuff in there. And then I'm going through and looking for, I went through and looked for stuff that I've already done, or things I did in the past, and said, all right, what can I fit into here? And, looking at those things along the right-hand side, a lot of that stuff was stuff that I kind of already had, but I felt I saw, a few things that either I needed to just tweak a little bit and kind of refocus it. Or, right now, some of it was just, how can I present it in a way that's hybrid or Zoom friendly?
Yes.
Yeah, all the learning criteria, literally, I think I just copy and pasted it off of the NGSS, the evidence statements. And then, you have all those things there, and you can see all the bullet point things are basically telling you, hey, these are the things they need to know. And then I'm looking for which of my activities, things that I'm doing fit, to kind of match those up. And some of them will kind of bounce around in between a couple different places. And that I feel like that's totally fine. I don't think that, to not overwhelm people with too much information, if you can address multiple stuff in one thing, then you only have one thing for them to do, instead of 6 different activities to try to hit each little bullet point that's on there.
And I, from my standpoint, one thing I want to really show you guys is he's got one assessment for standard with all of these activities. And when Jesse came to our team with this, it made it a lot easier for us to really advance him quickly. Like, we could look through these activities and give him ideas of how he might update. Said, what if you brought in another cross-cutting concept? What if we created a graphic organizer for cause and effect? And then, you know, instead of having 30 questions on a worksheet, they're watching a video, they're watching the video, they're making cause and effect for each of the plate boundaries. And then we're going to, you know, figure out which question we want to have within those. And then the other thing that I want to just point out to you guys really quickly, because our time is up, but this is his phenomenon. And this is what he came up with for his phenomenon, because I think that's new to people. And this is like, Jesse, this is amazing. What he created here is so great. So he's got his phenomenon, and he's basically going to walk kids through asking questions. And based on some experience he had with doing that, it didn't work so well. And so he made some adjustments to it. But then the other thing that our team was able to say was, now let's look through all of your activities, right? So here's all of his activities. But the other part of this is, these are your storyline. So when we say storyline in 3D, what we're saying is, can you tweak these formatives to go back to your phenomenon? Because everything that kids are doing in those formatives should be about answering and solving this phenomenon, like being able to allow them to make meaning of that phenomenon. And I think, like, from my point of view, I felt like we were successful. Jesse can say otherwise, and totally fine, because I need that feedback, right? We need that feedback as a team. But I feel like because he did this work, fine tuning that and getting that understanding was easier. And actually not just for him, but Doc was in it, and so was Rachel. And I watched both of them also shaking their head, and they hadn't even done this lesson planning with him, but because we walked through it, they could see that how it would be useful, or at least I felt like they did. I think they're both in here too. But at any rate, this is, we know, overwhelming, but we wanted to show you somebody. I wanted to show you Jesse, who's been walking through this process, so that you can also identify somebody. And Jesse, he'll give you, I don't know if you know Jesse, but he'll shoot it straight for you. What's good about it, what's not good about it. So I'm gonna stop.
So Deb, one thing I want to mention too is
Sure.
that I put the planning the unit template in that Jesse used. I put it in the chat. I also have single point rubrics for every middle school standard. And I also, which I have shared with most middle school teachers. If you don't have them, let me know. I created single point rubrics for all of the NGS high school ones, the first two for this second semester as well. I'm working on creating those. So if you need a single point rubric, let me know what standard and I can create it for you to make it go faster for you.
If you're doing AP or honors, let me know, or PLTW, let me know, and make that one for you. Because it's a little bit different, but that's how we're going to divvy it. All right, I'm gonna stop screen sharing because everybody's late for their other session. They're going to be, well, you can go into the module and do the evaluation. We'll also, I think what I'm going to do just to make sure everybody's got it is we're going to email it. I intended to put it in the chat. Wait, let's see if I can find it really fast and put it in the chat for you. And we're changing that up. So you're going to want to make sure that you, yeah, I'm going to have to email it to you. Oh, no, I'm not, because Sarah is flipping amazing. That's Sarah. Okay. So you're going to want to do this within 24 to 78 hours. And once you do this eval, it's actually then at the end of it, your CPDUs are there. But you got to do it within, 72 hours. So that'd be like Wednesday next week. Make sure you do it by then, because we turn that off. So there it is. Go ahead and do it. Thank you so much. Hey, Jesse, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no problem. And if anybody wants to shoot ideas off me.
Access denied.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can fix that. All right, I'll get that fixed for you guys. I know you got to go to your next session, which might be yes. And we'll fix the access denied for you. Thanks, everybody. All right, we'll see you at the next session, and I'll get that fixed for you guys. I'm so sorry. Hey, Jesse, that was awesome. Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
I appreciate you.
Anything else you need from me?
No, that's it. I appreciate it.
Cool. Okay.
Okay. Bye.
See you later.